Greetings, welcome. So we're still doing this orthogonally wound 2 coils with 2 magnets in there, and I'm just going to talk for a little bit about where I'm going to be going with that, and then I'll just also show you some other things. You know, I'm convinced now that there's something that's different about this, but I'm not sure about this, but I'm starting to wonder, like, unless the thing weighs 1.5 tons, it's more of like a toy store novelty kind of thing. But it's darn interesting, and I'll show you some other things that have popped up that are kind of cool. So previously, 2 videos ago, showed a little bit with telluric currents and how different grounds changed what was showing up with the telluric currents. What I found out more recently is that if you're running this thing without any power, and so I guess there's just the ground current there, and you're interrupting it, it's a little bit like a buck boost or a boost or something, because you get a lot more out into here. So in other words, I was like, pulse it once and delay for 3,000, you would still get a bit of the cap rise that you couldn't tap out, and short out. It would always be there. But if you just let the thing run, there's a lot more of it. Now, it does kind of bring up an interesting question that, maybe you never need to turn that on and you just use the telluric currents and interrupt the flow there. I don't think you'd ever get anywhere near. So in other words, you would put it into here, then at some point after that got charged, you would put that out to a cap here, and then have the cap, do another thing in addition to the telluric current, so then it would charge a little faster. And then I doubt you would ever end up covering your switching costs, but maybe you would. It'd be a lot of work to set something like that up. But let me just show you here. And there's another really weird thing with this too. So that was just, see, I'm grabbing it, so it's going all over the place. I want to short it out. Okay. And that's just the thing running. Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll do that again. So now I've just let it go once, and then we'll shut it down for 3 seconds, and then we will switch it once, just for the heck of it. And I got to try to do this with my, get my hand out of the way quickly enough, but okay, short it out. And you see it still goes, but not like, okay, we'll get rid of this and see where it ends up. Okay, I got rid of the delay. Now it's back to just, pulsing the telluric. Whoa. And get my hand out of the way. And so it's going up to more than twice the voltage without, if these switches weren't pulsing, even though there's nothing in them. And if we start to add grounds around, okay, with nothing flowing into the coil, you can't put the ground there, but if I put it on here, that's not too shabby. We got nearly 1/3 of a volt. Now, when I hook it up to the cap, it's making things worse, but if I touch my finger here, that's pretty good. There's like just a volt. Let's see if we can do even better. Oh, come on, I'm trying to bridge both of these. It's about the same. So there's like 1 volt there for nothing. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you could take that 1 volt, put it into here, and then actually, use that to go into the cap to actually put something going through, and then try to repeat that and see if you can get it going faster and faster. But as I also said, I bet you'd never make up the switching costs. That's not even the weirdest thing with this, is I'm just going to, doesn't matter, I'm removing all the grounds, and it's kind of hard to keep, for this thing to have a steady value. And what I realized, I'm just going to bless the thing now. Oh, if I knew Latin now, I'd be giving a benediction. I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it. I'm just letting my hand hover over it like I'm going to anoint it or something. And remove my hand, bring my hand in. Remove my hand. And there's no galvanic connection. Let's see if I tap it, it's better. But it's amazing to me that just, I mean, there's like a centimeter, and you doubled it. So I don't know how much, if any of that, is related to the goofy way that this coil is set up. But you have to consider, when we're pulsing this thing, boom, 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 with the galvanic currents, that's through this coil, which is orthogonal. So it's only affecting the magnet. Now, also, if I bless the coil or this cap, it's much less pronounced. But if I'm blessing the bridge, it works just as well as the cap. I have no idea what to make of any of this, but it's like such a cool toy. Okay, so if we get back to the question at hand, when I throw voltage at this, like 10 volts, what I'm noticing is that, it seems like a third of what's happening is just this galvanic stuff. So there is, I'm not going to bore you with trying to repeat it all, and it's hard to quantify. It's just kind of me eyeballing it. But I would say maybe not a third. It could be as little as a tenth or a fifth, but a significant portion of what's going on is just this galvanic stuff. And so this is a minuscule amount that you're getting out of here. I don't know if people find this boring. I obviously have fun with it. But the other question that is, and there's a few questions. How long do I want to spend on this? And so the first question is, why does this work? And what I'll say at this point is I have no clue. Let's just leave it at that. I was going to say something different, but I have no clue. There are certain things to consider, though. And the first is, do the magnets have anything to do with it? Because what I see happening is this orthogonal coil is changing the magnetic field that's induced in the magnets. That gets passed along. So is it all the geometry? And I will say, I ordered 2 ferrite cores from DigiKey, because magnets aren't designed to deform from an exogenous magnetic field, while these are. So this is, I'll call it operation most likely will end badly, but it needs to be looked at, because if you get the same effect and the lens doesn't make it back to the primary and the magnet part is just a red herring, then you got something that's not a toy store thing. It probably won't work, but it might. I mean, I don't want to be too pessimistic. Obviously I think it might, because I ordered them. Now, why I don't want to spend too much time on all this, it takes a long time to wind these things. This one is easy, the one going around like that. This one where you got to wind it through here is, what do they call, crochet? It's like that. It takes a long time to do those. So this is going to be worth doing to see, and I've got another coil former all set, and I'll print that out and then wind another one like this. There are a couple other things. Now with more wire, and you start to run into an issue of space. The other thing is, I also, and this will, depending on how this goes, I've also ordered some magnets that are about twice as big. So if this fails, then I also got magnets twice as big just to go with those and see what happens. That gives you more magnet area to deform, from the applied magnetic field, and it gives you more room to put more windings on. So more windings, I'll just go over this real quick. The Q factor is a function of L over R. I mean, Tesla says it in one of his patents. Until you run into skin effect or proximity effect, but there's plenty of room to go on there. Well, it's also going to be a function of your core, which, in this case, the core is something really funky with the magnets. In this case, it's a bit different. These are meant to do that. But in general, the idea is, if you get more winds on there, you'll get a better Q factor, which is good. You'll also, with more windings, get more induction, so you'll slow it down. This thing's really fast, and you can't catch just like one wave with the opto-isolated solid-state relays. The second part is a weird one to think about, and I don't want to start on this unless I start seeing promising stuff. I think if it's not real promising, I'm just gonna go back to the spinning rotors. So you got the issue of Q factor, and then you also have the issue of magnetic field strength, and we can talk about the B field, which is going to be, the unit is the ampere turn, and then you also have the H field. As I understand it, the H field is the B field plus whatever core material you have. So with an air core, it's essentially just the winds. With something like this, much of the magnetic field strength is going to be determined by the core. With this, it's mainly determined by the winds, but you'll get a little bit probably because these ceramic magnets have some iron in them, and so they have some ferrite. They behave a little bit like this, like these do. So where I'm at. So the weird thing to think about is that if you continue to not get feedback, what happens if you used, in this case, if you used thinner gauge wire? So let's say you use, from this gauge of wire, a gauge of wire where you could fit twice as many winds, and now the induction is 1/2. The resistance is 1/2. So talking about the B field there, what's happened? Let's back up for a moment. So I said the B field is the unit of the B field is the ampere turn. So let's pretend there's 100 winds here, and let's pretend we're putting 1 amp through. I'm not talking about the transition as this thing is pulsing, but if you left the thing on for 10 seconds, after a tenth of a second or whatever, it reaches a steady state. And now there's current flowing through that is a function of just the resistance of the wire. We call it the direct current resistance, and your voltage. So let's say that once this thing is stabilized to its steady state, you're putting an amp through and you have 100 turns. That would be 100 ampere turn B field. Well, forget changing the wire gauge for the moment. Let's just say that you doubled the length of the wire. You would fit nearly twice as many turns, maybe a little bit less, because of it's getting a little bit wider. but nearly twice as many turns. So your resistance doubles, therefore your amp draw is halved. Your number of turns doubles. So you have the same B field, you have the same magnetic B field strength, but you have half of the amp draw that you did previously. Now the other thing is that it slows down, say, you know, if it's a LC tank circuit, it now oscillates more slowly. And even if you're just putting a direct current into it, there's more induction, and so it transitions through its transition more slowly. And if it's these magnets, I mean, does that make an effect on that? But if it didn't, then, you know, you can take that out a long ways. So right now, this thing is a minuscule amount of power that comes out as compared to what's going in. But I mean, imagine if it's like 38 gauge wire and you have a thing like that. So that's why I was saying, like, maybe this thing has to be like a half-ton machine or something to get it to. But so far I haven't seen any lens feedback to this primary, and there is something coming off of there. The question is, how can we improve it? And the neatest thing would be if the whole magnet part is a red herring, because these things are meant to be coils. So that's the first thing to do, and it'll take me a little while to do that because, as I said, we gotta sew the thing. That's what I'm going to be looking at, is first doing the same thing with just ferrite cores instead of magnets. And then if this, as I expect, I don't know why this works, but if I expect that this doesn't work and you run into the lens effect again, then go with bigger magnets and see, you know, how that changes things and whether there's a dramatic improvement there. And depending on how much progress I'm making, we'll decide how long I keep going with this. But we'll try to also get back to the spinning rotors with now the ceramic magnets, and I think that'll work really well. It would be nice to have, you know, like something that's putting out some decent power for you all before World War III gets us all killed. Sorry, I want to keep things light and lively. There's no point in worrying about the things that I am not, you know, and not involved in. Just leave it at that. Whoo, Nelly. Okay, I've talked at you enough. Stay healthy, stay safe, keep smiling, and back at you with some more of these goofy coils before too long. Thanks, bye.